Second, we've tracked this arc from monitoring Soviet communications during the Cold War
Right.
through MKUltra's hidden manipulations to now potentially deploying a device in a low-income tenant's bathroom that the manufacturer or the police can remotely turn into a listening bug at the push of a button.
It feels like the ultimate manifestation of that dominator culture's reach. Total penetration.
So the ethical questions become unavoidable, don't they? When you look at this whole architecture of control, from Echelon filtering keywords to Propol predicting crime based on biased data to the Halo device in the bathroom.
You have to ask, what does this technology actually do? And maybe more importantly, as the sources put it, whose interest does this technology serve?
And the overwhelming evidence seems to suggest it serves the interests of entrenched power and control, which, again, seems to justify that rational decision by young people, or anyone really, to distrust the system and maybe just opt out entirely.
Exactly. This historical arc of betrayal, now magnified by modern industrial surveillance, it leads directly to what feels like the core crisis now. The erosion of reality itself. We seem to be entering what some call the AI generational reset moment.
A reset moment. How so?
Because deception is no longer difficult or expensive. It's becoming industrialized, democratized for anyone, including adversaries, to use malevolently.
We're already seeing examples, right? Adversaries using AI for much better social engineering, crafting more convincing phishing attacks, advanced vulnerability research to find new ways to hack systems, creating AI-powered malware that can adapt its attack strategy in real time.
And the reality check, the thing that makes it visceral, are cases like that finance worker in Hong Kong, tricked into paying out $25 million after a video call.
Because the CFO on the call was a deepfake.
An AI-generated replica. If you can't trust what you see or hear, even from someone you think you know in a position of authority,
Right.
what can you trust? The very fabric of trust phrase.
In this erosion of authenticity, it feels amplified by the total breakdown of constructive dialogue in the public sphere, doesn't it?
Completely. The world seems defined by people just talking across each other. Everyone's talking only to their own base, their own echo chamber. It's driven by instant emotion, outrage cycles, rather than nuanced reason. And the result? Increased strife, increased conflict. There's no shared language of fact anymore, just competing narratives battling it out.
And this dynamic, it creates a kind of displaced resentment, doesn't it? People feel utterly powerless. They see corruption, they see systemic deceit from major figures in politics, finance, big tech.
Frustration, that anger, it gets displaced. Onto minor figures, proximal targets. You see this disproportionate outrage over minor figures. It's like a psychological pressure cooker, where small targets absorb the fury that can't actually reach the powerful figures responsible for the bigger problems.
So we have polarization, a crisis of authenticity, deep fakes undermining reality. This poses a fundamental challenge to, like, human worth itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If AI is already super at calculation, language translation, maybe even writing code.
Exactly. AI exhibits super capabilities in many domains we used to think were uniquely human. The existential question now becomes, can AI be Newton? Can it originate a new field of physics? Can it be Picasso? Can it truly invent radical novelty, something completely unforeseen?
So the argument is the remaining uniquely human abilities might be things like creativity, abstraction, the ability to come up with new problems, not just efficiently solve the ones we already have.
That seems to be where the edge lies. We might need to move away from defining human worth purely by our productivity or our compliance within the existing system and refocus on this radical skill set of novel creation, generating the unexpected.
Which brings us finally to Terence McKenna and his proposed antidote to all this decay. Radical creation, fueled by, well, the psychedelic impulse.
Right. McKenna saw the psychedelic experience pushed to its limits as a way to satisfy that deep human need for discovery. He called it exploring a nude part of the human mind. He saw it as a critical path to generating genuine novelty.
Why did he think psychedelics were so essential for this?
Because he believed they dissolve cultural assumptions. They force you, whether you're a rigid bureaucrat clinging to procedure or an academic clinging to dogma, they force you to doubt your most ingrained beliefs.
To question the operating system.
Exactly. This process of dissolving boundaries, challenging fixed reality, that's the key weapon, in his view, against the dominator culture, which relies entirely on rigid, enforced narratives and fixed categories.
And McKenna framed this struggle differently, didn't he? Not as a political war, but as a
meme war. Yeah. Ideas, memes, compete for dominance, for replication, just like genes do in biology. And for a meme to survive and spread, it needs to be copied faithfully. That requires clarity of understanding.
Clarity.
And he argued that new technologies, like the internet back then and maybe AI now, are forces that inherently empower diversity and eccentricity. They allow weird, novel ideas, new memes to spread rapidly, and that diversity is precisely what threatens the old print mind. The fixed hierarchical institutions built on controlled, linear, top-down narratives.
He took this philosophical break pretty far, didn't he?
Yeah.
Suggesting a really revolutionary cultural shift away from the Apollonian solar paternalistic dominator archetype. That's quite a phrase.
It is dense, yeah. Let's unpack it. The dominator archetype, as McKenna and others like Mariann Eisler described it, is defined by things like hierarchy, control, a scarcity mentality, rigid masculine structures, linear time, competition.
It sounds like the architecture of the systems we've been discussing, the MKUltra control, the Echelon surveillance, the Halo device enforcing rules.
Exactly. It dictates that only one truth can exist, and that truth is owned and enforced by the powerful. It's about imposing order from the top down.
And he contrasted this
with the feminine, oceanic, intuitive giving and taking archetype of flow and life and death and completion. This represents intuition, interconnectedness, nonlinear thinking, an abundance mentality, flexibility, embracing paradox.
So it's about embracing a fluid, creative reality
Right.
rather than trying to impose a fixed, controlled one.
Precisely. It's about participation in this connects to his interest in Gnosticism.
Gnosticism, how does that fit in?
Well, Gnosticism, in the specific context McKenna used it, carries this core belief that we don't belong here, meaning we don't belong in this current, broken, controlled, materialistic reality manufactured by the dominator culture, and that we were destined for, or capable of achieving, a better deal, a higher state of consciousness, a connection to a higher truth. It's fundamentally a call for a radical break from the current cultural structures, a quest for profound, internalized knowledge gnosis that transcends the corrupt external authority.
That sounds, well, it sounds beautiful philosophically.
Yeah.
But isn't McKenna's solution just walking away, focusing on intuition? Isn't that just another form of the opt-out we started with? How is it a sustainable solution rather than just, high-minded escapism when the system feels like it's collapsing? The listener wants to know how we push the system to adjust, right?
Yeah.
How do we force change?
That is the absolute critical tension, isn't it? And McKenna distinguishes his philosophy from mere escapism, I think, by demanding action that is rooted in that claimed internal integrity. When you ask how we push the system, how we assert change, his mandate specifically avoids traditional organizing or revolution.
Why? Because those often just recreate the same power structures.
That's the argument. That they often end up mirroring the dominator structure they seek to overthrow. So his solution wasn't about organizing political parties or signing petitions or even civil war.
It was.
It was about just walking away from all of that, claiming your identity, claiming your vision, being your intuition, and then acting from that without regret, cleanly without regret.
Acting without regret.
It's an assertion of radical individual agency. The idea is that if enough people do this, if they act with such clarity and unique vision, it becomes so potent, so undeniable, it renders the old controlling structures irrelevant. They can't categorize it, they can't co-opt it easily.
Can we ground this philosophical idea in anything concrete? Does this principle of trusting individual agency actually work?
Well, look at a seemingly unrelated field. Poverty alleviation. Traditional bureaucratic aid programs, the ones run by experts designing complex systems, they often failed, didn't they?
Yeah, lots of overhead red tape.
Right. The bureaucratic overhead was massive. Critics argued the experts effectively stole the money through administrative costs, hoops to jump through, often humiliating paperwork that stripped recipients of their dignity and agency.
Okay, so what's the alternative?
The strategy of unconditional cash transfers. Simply giving a lump sum of money, say $900, no strings attached directly to impoverished individuals or families.
And does that work better?
The evidence is increasingly showing it's far more effective in many contexts. Why? Because it respects the dignity and the competence of the people receiving the aid. It operates on the principle that they didn't lack knowledge of what they needed. They lacked the capital.
They were trusted to make their own choices. Their agency was the driving force.
Exactly. That trust, that recognition of inherent competence and dignity, that is the true defiance against the dominator culture. The dominator culture fundamentally believes that only the powerful elite, the experts, can manage reality and decide what's best for the masses.
So the purpose then? of studying the deepfake, of understanding the surveillance algorithm, of knowing the history of MKUltra. It's not just about being smart or informed.
It's not just intellectual, it's to inform the decision to do something, to act, to press that art pedal, as McKenna might say, through the floor with radical, undeniable human creation and assertion of character. The path forward isn't just critique, it's asserting human agency against the corruption and deceit, creating novelty the system simply cannot anticipate or control.
So when you've lost faith because of institutional deceit, when you see surveillance creeping into your bathroom, when the very language of authority feels compromised by AI lies, opting out seems rational.
It does.
But McKenna's point, maybe buttressed by things like this success of dignity-based economic actions, is that the real power isn't in martyrdom or quiet escape. It's in radical, undeniable creation and clarity of action stemming from that claimed inner truth. #tag outro. So what does this all mean then? We started with that bright, shiny promise of prosperity and morality from the 1950s, and we traced its decay through layers of calculated government deceit, MKUltra, the political criminalization of consciousness, the hypocrisy.
And then into the modern era, the horror of global surveillance like Echelon, mirrored by those local snitch pucks in public housing.
Yeah. It seems clear the young generation, feeling compelled to opt out today, is responding pretty rationally to a documented record of systemic failure and a profound lack of integrity from institutions.
Absolutely. But the antidote, if we follow McKenna's line of thought, isn't ultimately despair or nihilism. It's this radical assertion of unique human capacity. Intuition, creativity, and the power to act from your own vision, cleanly, without regret. The focus shifts from fighting the external lie to building an internal, undeniable truth through your actions, through your creations.
And we've established that this current AI generational reset moment, where deepfakes proliferate and reality feels unstable, it makes those human capacities, creativity, abstraction, coming up with the truly new, perhaps our last, unique advantages.
Right.
But to actually execute that radical creation, to speak truth in a world that's increasingly defined by sophisticated lies and geared towards generating mass contempt for dissenters, intelligence isn't enough, is it?
No, it requires something more fundamental: character, ethics, and maybe above all, courage.
Courage. If AI can perfect the language of lies, like that deepfake CFO tricking someone out of millions, and we as humans have this capacity to create radical, maybe even beautiful, unquestionable truth through art, through action, through authentic connection, then we're entering a moment that demands courage more than anything.
Think about Bishop Mariann Budde, for example. Standing up, speaking truth to power directly from her position, knowing full well she would face, and did face, massive contempt and backlash from people occupying the highest seats of power. Her action wasn't calculated for political gain. It seemed driven by an internal, uncompromised clarity of purpose, by conscience.
That courage, the willingness to speak your truth, to act on your truth, even when it's wildly unpopular, even when the systems of power are designed to discredit you with surveillance, with deepfakes, with political isolation, that feels like the one thing a computer cannot replicate.
It can't synthesize courage. It can't be programmed, only lived, only practiced.
So the ultimate question for all of us, maybe as we watch AI perfect the language of lies, is whether we can cultivate and practice this courage enough. Starting with individual conviction, maybe finding it through exploring those nude parts of the mind McKenna talked about, and ending with clear, decisive action.